Good afternoon, Mr. Maxwell. I wish I could call you Dr. Maxwell, but I think I'll call you Dr. Maxwell, even though you don't have a
Good
PhD
afternoon,
yet.
Sahid.
Um, good afternoon.
I'm doing
How are
good.
you?
I'm
How have
doing
you
good.
been?
It's been a
It's
while.
it it's been a while. It's been like we were saying before we started. It's been like 15 years since I
Correct,
saw you face to
correct.
face. When you came to Nigeria. That was what,
Hmm.
2012, 2011,
Round about
2010.
that, yes. Round about that. Hmm.
Yeah, run about that. Yeah, that was the last time we saw,
Correct.
but we've
That's a
kept in
long time.
touch. So thank 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 you for coming on the Lipo Japa podcast. It's I'm excited to do this with you because you're not a very easy man to catch. So you agreeing to do this is exciting for me, and I hope people that would listen to your story would also understand my excitement for wanting to do this. So everyone, this is Maxwell. Maxwell and I go way back. We went to undergrad together in Mina, and we graduated in 2005. He was in electrical, I was in math. We worked together during our internship, and we, grew very close since then. But his story is remarkable, and I, would like him to share that. So I'll start with your background, essentially. What sparked your interest in engineering? You did your masters in instrumentation. Everyone did electrical engineering, and most electrical engineers either wanted to do computers eventually, but you did your own. You're your own guy. You know how to execute your own plans, and you're usually not with the fold. So what exactly, how did that interest start out?
Well, with the engineering, it was, back in the days when we were very young, we used to have a top three of
Yeah.
medicine, engineering, law. So I did consider
Yes.
medicine. And over time I had to reevaluate that career path, and I considered
Okay.
engineering, electrical to be specific, and I stuck with it. So I guess
Okay.
when I was in my early teens, I did see the prospect of working in an oil and gas company, and that was my main drive. And
Oh, okay.
most of the mentors I had did pass a vote of confidence for electrical. So that's basically my motivation for studying electrical engineering. And obviously, after my degree, I
Yeah.
moved on to applied instrumentation and control. So I guess that's another story. Did you want me to go into that now?
I mean, yeah. I mean, we could. I mean, yeah. So you finished. I know you had a small stint with computer stuff that you did. You did some Oracle, but what was that? There must have been something that drove you towards
Mhm.
applied instrumentation. What was that? What was that drive? What did you
Okay,
see?
so like you rightly mentioned, I did have a stint in IT, and obviously back in the days,
Yes,
you were one of my mentors in that field, programming to be
that's
specific.
what you keep
So
saying,
yes, I was in IT, and
right?
so the course I studied was electrical and computer engineering, right? So the computer aspect, I
Engineering.
did some, like you
Yes,
rightly said, programming database. And when it was time to do my master's, I did consider continuing with the IT sector. I was actually considering IT law. I was going into that area.
Oh, okay.
But I was
Okay.
at when I was at that junction to make the decision, I had to
Right.
reevaluate. And like I said, I went through the same process. I had
Okay.
some mentors who had gone before me provide advice.
Okay.
So I was looking at doing a course that would give me inroads into the power sector. So that was something that I had interest in. I
Okay.
was particularly interested in the cybersecurity aspects of power generation. So I was looking for a
Oh, okay.
course. I still had the oil and gas in mind, but I was looking for a course that would give me options. So I applied
Okay.
I applied instrumentation control because I looked at the IT side, and it was an opportunity for me to
Okay.
create a bridge between IT and engineering, if you like. So
Oh,
yeah, I had different
now I
people
understand the thinking.
mentor me towards making that decision. So it was well thought after, and yeah. So when I look back, I would say yes, I
Okay.
made the right
Okay.
decision.
Oh, okay. Okay. So now it makes sense. Now you were looking for
Correct.
that connection for yourself because you had both skills. You wanted to
Correct.
explore that. So 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 this was your first leap, I would say. So this was your first leap from
Correct.
Nigeria to the UK. So how was that experience? When you because we were in the UK roughly about the same time. I was there
Mm-hmm.
from 2006
Mm-hmm.
to 2007. You got there about the same time? Was it
I think I
2007?
got in a year or a
It's,
couple of
it's been a
years
while.
after you. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So how was that experience? How was that UK experience? The course and everything.
Okay. So about the course. So culturally, I was. I think, as you know, I was attuned to the lifestyle. So I didn't have much culture shock. In terms of the course,
Right. Okay.
so
Right.
I went to Scotland because, and then the university I went to, Glasgow, Cali, because at that time, not many universities
Right.
in the UK offered the course, so applied instrumentation and control in the way it was offered. So that's why, and also I
Okay.
have some soft spot for Scotland. So it was very easy to make that
Oh, okay.
decision. And in terms of the course, there was also an opportunity to do an
Yeah.
industrial placement for 3 months in the industry. So that was an
Oh,
added
okay.
attraction for me. And yeah, so that's how it was. So the transition wasn't difficult. I would say was difficult when I look back. Obviously, I didn't
Difficult.
have any language challenge.
Okay.
And like I say, culturally, I was already attuned
Right.
even before I traveled from Nigeria. So there was no issues in that regard.
Right.
And then in terms of the academics,
Okay.
the only change I would say was the
Yes.
fact that the way the course was structured, it was structured in such a way that the modules were delivered one at a time. So you took one module, you went through to the
Okay.
very end. So I would say it was intense,
Okay.
right? But I wouldn't say it
Right.
was more intense than what I had faced back in Nigeria.
Back in Nigeria. No. Okay. So you've gone through. You've talked about mentorship and everything. So this is my first question. Your first job in the UK. What was it? How did you get it? Because like I initially introduced you, you knew how
Mm.
you knew what you wanted, and you were able to go for it. So how did you go through that process of getting a job and knowing that this is exactly what I want to do?
Yeah, so I've always used the mentorship resource, right? So I used
Okay.
it whilst I was in
Right.
university. So I basically aligned myself with people who had gone that path before me, and I tried to get contacts within
Right.
the
Okay.
power generating sector. So it
Oh.
wasn't
Okay.
it
Okay.
wasn't easy getting a placement, but I worked at it. Like I said,
Okay.
benefited from mentors. I had a couple of links,
Right.
and I had to I had to obviously prove that I could do the job. So I went through and I had 3 months
Okay.
placement in a nuclear generating company. And the experience I gained during that time
Right.
was pivotal to me getting a job in the nuclear sector. So that was actually how it was. That was the link between
Right.
the university course and working in the industry.
And working industry. And during these placements, what were you working on? If you can remember, I know it's been a while, but what were those things? What were those key points that you that that came out that jumped at you and said? I like this, I like this, I like this. What were those things that really captured your
Okay,
mind for that?
so let me go back to the course. So one of the courses we did had to
Okay,
do with some computer aided design, and so this is where the IT
okay, okay.
and the programming bit
Right.
worked to my advantage.
Okay,
So immediately I developed interest
okay,
in anything related to programming, computer aided design, and my projects in the industry, had a lot of, I used LabVIEW and I used some other software, but it was focused on that. So it was
right.
a data logging system to basically
Okay,
improve on the reliability of data logging for certain signals. So that's kind of what it was. So what I did was I created a system that could acquire data and present that data in a
okay,
format that was user friendly, and also put in place a
okay,
strategy to ensure that that data was accessed in a reliable way. So that's basically what the project was. It was a data logging system.
right.
Correct.
For the data logging system, and that brought both
Exactly. So,
interests.
yeah.
Essentially, you had the instrumentation bit, being able to understand
Hmm.
what the system was doing, and being able to write programs that were able to store data. And you had a database background, so that
Correct.
was
And then
like a match
networking
made in
that
heaven.
background as well, because we had to use cables, serial cables
Okay,
back in the days to to connect the signals. So yeah.
right. Okay, okay. Okay, okay, okay. So now on to the next bit that is very fascinating to me. After your placement, you ended up working
Correct.
in the UK. What company was that? So by this time, you had cut your teeth with power generation, nuclear power generation at this point. So was it a natural transition to just work for the company you worked for?
Yes, so it was a natural transition. And then whilst I was in the UK, I had my sights
Right.
on power generation, and specifically nuclear. And the company I
Okay.
worked for was a company
Nuclear. Yeah.
that had recently been acquired by a French company, and there was an opportunity. So I knew that there was an
Oh, okay.
opportunity for engineers to be sent over to France as part of knowledge sharing between France and the UK. So I knew I had to position myself
Okay.
to take that opportunity. So that's kind of how it was. So when I
Okay.
started in the UK, one of the
Right.
motivations for joining that company was the opportunity to work for the parent company in France.
In France. So you knew. So you prior to joining, you
Yes,
knew the
yes,
acquisition
I did.
had happened, and you knew that
Correct.
opportunity was coming. Okay. So you worked for a bit in the UK. How long did you work in the UK for?
I was part of we had a graduate scheme where, graduates
Okay.
from university spent 1 year working on different projects around the country. So I spent 1 year working on projects and an extra year, I believe. Yeah. Uh, yeah, roughly 12 months in the UK before I went to France.
Okay. So, and that brings us to the second story. Then you had, first of all, you leaped from Nigeria to the
Yeah.
UK, finished your program, got a placement, started working for this company that had French affiliation, and then you had a second leap, and that second leap
Correct.
took you to France. And what was that like? So that's a you typically don't get people moving to France.
Yeah,
What
so
was
that's
that
where the
like?
culture shock came in.
Oh, okay.
So I would say that so before getting the opportunity, I had to improve on my French. So that's a big one. So I had to do plenty of
Yeah.
background work in the UK even before I moved over. So yeah, so
Oh,
and that was
really? Okay.
because we had interviews. So I had to go through interviews in French because obviously I was um, I was
Oh,
to be seconded, so I had to be selected from a pool of
okay.
candidates who also aspired to go over to France to work. So French language skills was obviously one of the
Okay.
criteria for being selected, and I had to work on that. So yeah, so that's basically where the culture. So
Okay.
what I did was I started to immerse myself in French, even whilst in the UK
Okay.
before traveling over. So I know for days I would just watch French, listen to French news, watch French,
Okay.
French material. So that's what I did, and then I practiced my
Okay.
interviews in French. I knew some what I was doing. In
Oh
many
wow.
cases, I knew nothing, but all I did was, in some cases, I. So what I did was I translated questions and answers in French, and
Okay.
where I could understand, I tried to understand. Where I couldn't, I memorized. So, so that's what I did,
Okay.
and so the interviews went well, and I think
Wow.
the people interviewing me were impressed by the just the sheer passion.
Okay.
And yeah, so that kind of helped. So some of the things they checked were
And
your appreciation for the language, and also your drive, and you notice
okay.
people have a way of sensing,
Okay.
how genuine your interest is. So it kind of worked out well. And then when I moved over to
Yes.
France, it was interesting because the
Yes.
department I worked with, so my boss at
Yes.
that time was bilingual. I would say she was bilingual. She was quite good, right, in English. So
Okay.
she received me in English, very good English, and we spoke, we
Okay.
discussed, we talked about the plans. And then
Right.
when it was time for her to
Okay.
introduce me to my colleagues, my new colleagues, so she told me as she opened the door, she was like,
Right.
Max, okay, as we go out, I'm not going to speak one word of English. So all you heard was the last. I was going to
Oh
speak
la la.
English. From now on, it's going to be French. And true to our word, it was French. So
All
I had to
through.
grind.
I remember we spoke once where you had, I think you told me that you had to do every single thing in French. The documentation of the plant you were in was in French.
Correct.
Everything was in French. How did you what was that shock like to do everything in French?
So I would say the technical bit was not as difficult as the conversational French. That's what's really difficult. Sometimes you get a brain freeze. You
Okay.
don't know how to construct a sentence. You're like, goodness me, I thought I knew the basics. There are times where you just go blank. But the technical bits,
Wow.
you can make out things, right?
Okay.
So it makes sense, right? So when
Yes.
you're talking about radioactivity and things like that, you can make things out, right? So it's not so bad. However,
Right.
you have to bring up your French to a level where you can articulate information logically. And the French are very
And technically as well.
they are very what's the word now, when it comes to spoken French, they have very high standards, right? So you really have to try. Well, you're not going to be judged too harshly because they know obviously you're not francophone, so
Right.
they were quite understanding. So
Right.
even if you make mistakes, they're happy to correct you.
Okay.
And yeah, so it wasn't too bad
Okay.
from a learning perspective because I had mentors also in France who helped me out with
In France.
translating from French into English and vice versa.
Okay. Did you have to improve your French in true learning?
Yes,
Did
I
you
did.
still take more
Oh yeah,
French?
well I did
Did
that.
you have
That helped.
did,
So when I
okay,
started in France, I had
okay,
one-to-one lessons, right? So I think it was twice every week, and I would go
okay,
to a French school, and
okay,
the lessons were
okay,
customized. So I had a teacher who would give me activities in French. I had to produce technical information in
okay,
French. So it helped. It helped my conversational French. And obviously, like I say, I was immersed, right? So I was doing things in
okay.
French, thinking in French. I attended French churches,
Thinking in French.
just in a bit to improve
Okay,
my French.
okay. And how long did you work in France for?
Oh,
I,
So I would say in total, how many years? Close to 10, thereabouts. Yeah.
10. And what kind of projects did you work on? This must have been very interesting projects. And how did your skills improve? Because with each new project, you got better technically, you got better conversationally in French. What were those kind of projects? You don't have to go into details, just to give an idea to people listening, the amount of work you need to put in to be at your best when you move countries. So what were those kind of
So when
projects?
I started off with, so I was employed as an instrumentation and control engineer. And that's because even before I moved
Okay.
into the nuclear sector, I knew that most nuclear power stations, and not just nuclear power stations, even power generating stations, instrumentation and control was one
Right.
area where expertise was needed. You had so many issues with obsolescence,
Okay.
issues with reliability, issues with the
Okay.
manufacturers going out of business. So you have problems with spares,
Oh, okay.
issues with having to backfit,
Okay.
retrofit. So I knew that was a problem. That was actually one of the things that informed my decision to go into instrumentation and control. So I started off as an instrumentation and control engineer, and
Okay.
when I moved over to France, I did something similar, but also I was branching out. So I was looking at other
Okay.
areas, right? Because as an instrumentation and control engineer, you are like the glue that holds other disciplines together. You're expected to have a good working knowledge of mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil, chemical engineering.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it was. So the project I worked on was I actually worked on a new nuclear power plant. At, I worked on the
Okay.
concept phase whilst I was in France.
Okay.
So it was basically design of the system, and also
Okay.
testing the system to see that it meets the design specification. So that was my first project. And as I progressed, like I said, I was branching out. I
Right.
was looking at the system, looking at a holistic view of the nuclear power plants. So I wasn't just focusing on one system, but also
Okay.
looking at the bigger picture, how my systems would contribute to the
Okay.
nuclear safety of plants. Yeah.
Okay. 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 That's fascinating, because I've never met someone that did nuclear power before. So you're the only guy that I know personally that has done a lot of nuclear energy, and you have grounded expertise. And so one of the things I wanted to I find, I'm going through the questions here, is, so two of them. What is the biggest challenge you faced while working on commissioning of nuclear plants, and how did you manage them? So you just talked about you finishing up a plant. What was the biggest challenge that you faced, and how did you manage that?
So, as a commissioning engineer, the biggest challenge I would
Right.
say is having to bring all the disciplines together, because that's the key phase, right?
Okay.
So you've carried out the design, you've installed, you've done your checks, your end of installation checks. So what everyone expects is that the plant functions, so the system, the equipment functions, and all eyes are on the commissioning, the commissioning team. So I'll say the biggest challenge is preparing for commissioning, having to sequence the tasks, because some of the tasks are quite complex and they require resources from different
Okay.
disciplines. So, and the projects you work
Okay.
on are time bound, schedules are really tight. And what tends to happen is commissioning
Okay.
is usually on a critical path, because everyone is expecting
Okay.
that bit to carry on without incident, right? So you have to plan and sequence the tasks. So I would say that's the biggest challenge, right? Having to get the right
Okay.
blend. So that's the biggest challenge, I would say, the sequencing and the plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, to add, now you've always mentioned that you had mentors over the years, and you have also now grown into a leadership position. So, what kind of mentorship do you provide for people that want to? Have you had people reach out that wanted to be
Sure.
budding nuclear engineers, nuclear power plants? So, how do you also provide that kind of scenario to help
Yeah.
other people?
So, so like you said, you mentioned that you hadn't met many people in the nuclear sector. So, what I can
Yes.
guarantee is that over the next 5 years, right? I think it's starting now. You're going to see a drastic change. The interest is gaining ground.
Okay.
You know, I know so many people who
Okay.
I have actually mentored towards not just professional registration, but also help them understand the benefits of nuclear. The interest is really encouraging. So many people in Africa, people in across the world, are
Okay.
getting interested, right, in
Okay.
this field. So what I try to do is so that's one thing I do in my time, my personal time. I help mentor people
Right.
towards becoming professionally registered and also helping them on their path to their path. Some of them have got interest in nuclear, and I would say it's very encouraging, right?
Okay.
I provide mentorship by sharing my personal
Okay.
experiences. Some people have got fears about working
Okay.
in the nuclear sector.
That was my next. That
Yeah,
was my next question. But yeah.
yeah. But no,
um.
to be honest, if I put it in context, right? So I work in a nuclear power plant. I go there
Yeah.
every day, and I'm not exposed.
Right.
The risks of exposure are even greater if you fly. So if you fly, so people who are let's
Oh,
say
really?
pilots and air hostesses and all, they're exposed, right? So it's not and
Right.
it's safe, right? It's safe. However, the safety is because there is a nuclear safety culture which people have to imbibe.
Okay.
So people who work in nuclear power stations. So there's that standard because if you incorrectly
Okay.
conceive or execute an action, it can have drastic effects, right? So it's safe. It's safe because of the
Right.
culture of the people working in nuclear power plants. But you should be rest assured you don't have
Right.
even in over there in where you are. I'm sure you have a nuclear power station not too
Yeah.
far away.
I'm pretty sure. And this was this was the next question because a lot of people have this very, maybe because of the movies, the Chernobyl, nuclear power, or what happened in Japan. But typically, how in terms of electrical generation, I'm sorry, power generation, how reliable is nuclear power compared to all this renewable energy sources that everybody just tries to tout? I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but I've heard and I've read, and now that I have you, that nuclear power plants is the most stable form of power generation you can have. I mean, we have nuclear submarines, for crying out loud. There's a reason why they're powered by nuclear and not something. So, how reliable? And these projects you've worked on that do power generation, how long have they been in operation? What's the
Okay.
efficiency and things
So
like
in
that?
terms
Yes.
of base load power, nuclear power is
Mm,
very, very reliable. So when you're talking about reliability, right? Really, really reliable. Nuclear is
yeah.
up there. I know people look at the accidents that you've cited. So Fukushima,
Yes.
Chernobyl, the accident that occurred in Chernobyl,
Yeah.
where basically there was plenty of human factors. There were obviously problems with the design, but ultimately the
Okay.
human factors were overriding. So things like pressure, putting pressure on the operators, and also
Okay.
bypassing, normal procedure. You have situations where politicians
Okay.
are making the rules, putting pressure on the operators.
Okay.
So those are the things that tend to happen. But I did mention nuclear safety culture. So
Okay.
what the nuclear safety culture,
Nuclear safety culture.
strives to establish is that people are behaving responsibly and not yielding to pressures like that. And there is
Okay.
also peer review. So, for instance, you could have people
Okay.
from, Ontario Power Generation going to Europe to learn from their colleagues and carry out
Okay.
inspections and vice versa.
Right.
So, all these checks are put in place to
Okay.
ensure that people act responsibly. But in terms of reliability, I think the data
Okay.
shows that nuclear power is available when you want it, right? And if you compare it to wind, for instance, or solar, you need certain other
Right.
factors to be present
Right.
and aligned before you get any
Very true.
anywhere close to the reliability figures of nuclear power. So it is reliable. It's so reliable that if you look at the developments around the world, if you look at China, for instance, it's incredible the number of nuclear power stations they're building. I'm talking about 20s. I don't know the actual figure, but
Wow.
it's definitely more than 20. Yeah,
Oh wow.
correct.
That much?
So if China is investing in something, it has to be. And so it's
Yeah.
not just China.
Has
Even
to be good.
I know some countries in Africa even are having interests. United Arab
Okay.
Emirates, so I'm talking about
Okay.
countries that are outside, the normal nuclear bases that we know. So it is reliable.
Okay. What is the this might sound like a silly question. What is the typical cost of
The
one?
typical cost of one.
Cost. Yeah.
So so let's use. So I don't want to give you figures, right? So if you were to build an EPR, so that's the one I worked on, right, in France, and then the UK one.
Okay.
So I know back in the days we were looking at figures of 12, 14 billion euros, but
That's not
it's
expensive.
since it's more expensive than that. So because of the overrun, cost
Exploded.
overrun. So let's push it to say
Okay.
anywhere between in dollars, let's say between 20 and 30. But then the country that you're building your power plant would determine how expensive it is. So, for instance, if you're going to sink, let's say, $30 billion in Europe, you'll probably
Right.
spend less if you're going to build that same plant in China. And that's just because of the cost of labor and so
Okay.
many other factors. But all
The
I can
cost of
say
labor.
is if you
Okay.
have $30 billion, it's going to get you a very
Right.
good and reliable third generation nuclear power plant. It's going to
That would
last you a minimum
last
of
how
60
long?
years. And that's minimum. Yeah.
60
Yeah,
years.
minimum
That's
because
oh
so like the
minimum.
EPR was designed for 60 years and with possibility of extensions,
Okay.
lifetime extensions. So if you replace the
Okay.
parts, the main components, you're basically giving it a new
Okay.
life. Just like replacing the engine of a car.
Okay.
You check the bodywork, you check the
Right.
tires, everything is good.
Right.
You can keep running.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's come back to France. What was it like? What was a typical day for you? If someone wanted to go to France, and what was everyday living like? What was family life like? Just paint a scenario of what I've never been to
Yeah.
France, so I'm
Yeah.
curious to know what it was like for
Oh
you.
goodness. So France is I don't know where to start, to be honest. I think no, France was really lovely. It's a country that is rich. There's so much culture, right? In
Okay.
every little town you live in, every city, there is something unique about that place.
Right.
Where do I
Okay.
start from? Is it the food? Is it the wine? I mean, it's
Okay.
France is a great country. It's a great country. Living in France, I would say, is it's good. The experience is just great. The people are passionate. I think the people know how
Okay.
to, in quote, live life.
Live life. I was gonna.
Oh my goodness, I like their passion. So when I started, so some of the culture shocks for me
Okay.
was in the way, I
Yeah.
guess my first few months, I was wondering, hey, what's happening? These guys are a bit probably too animated. So I never really understood why. But as time went on,
Okay.
I got to understand that the animation was just a way of expressing, what they had in their mind. So yes, they're quite expressive, quite passionate, and they're very competitive as well. They like to. So from the professional side, if I start from there, I would
Okay.
say most of what I know now as someone who
Yeah.
works in the nuclear sector, I learned that in France, and I would say the
Okay.
French are quite good, right, when it comes to first principles. Knowing about a subject, they like to go into the detailed. They're very, very
Okay.
detailed in that regard. So professionally, I would say yes, I learned a lot about not just working with them, but also learning about their thought process, especially when it comes to troubleshooting, when it comes to thinking outside the box and finding solutions. I did benefit a lot.
Okay.
And then in terms of the work life, so I would say
Right.
they tend to spend time, they take their time. So I had longer days.
Okay.
So compared to the UK, so in the UK I had I would say shorter days at work compared to France. So in France I
Okay.
had earlier start and later finish, but then the lunch breaks tended to be longer
Okay.
as well. So you could take your time and
Oh,
have
really?
a proper lunch on the average. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's very interesting. What part of France did you live in? I don't know anywhere in France. Did you live in the north? Did you live in the south? What are the people? Are they the people behave differently in the north or in the south? What is
Okay, so I lived in Tours. So that's in the Loire Valley, not too far from
Okay.
France. I'm from Paris. About if you're driving, it would take you probably 2 hours. I lived in where else do I live? I lived in
Okay.
Paris, and I lived in Normandy,
Okay.
in a city called Cherbourg. Yeah,
Ah, famous
yeah, I
Normandy.
lived in Normandy. The D-Day
Yeah.
region.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's true.
exactly. And it was
The
quite
D-Day region. Okay.
surreal, when you visit the different beaches, right? The D-Day beaches. And you know that so many
Okay.
years ago, the Allied forces were actually, yeah. So it's
Horses.
quite, what's the word now? You can get, you can get emotional, right? If you know what happened in those areas, yeah. So
Emotional
but then it's beautiful. So that's
in those
the
areas.
that's the ironic thing. Those beaches are
Okay.
really beautiful, right? But then each time you go there, you're always reminded
Okay.
of what happened in the past. But that's just Normandy. And then when you
Of
go
what
down
happened.
south to Marseille, it's beautiful,
Okay.
right? You go to you go to Nice, down south. It's really beautiful, right? In the
Right.
Loire area where I lived in, it's
Okay.
known for the castles. It's known for the rivers, right? And it's also known for, as people say, the French that is spoken in that area, in the Loire area, as people say, is it's the purest form of French, or the clearest form, as they say.
Oh,
So yeah, that's
oh,
what they
really?
say, right?
Is that
So it's
right?
known for it's for wine. So before I came to France, I wasn't very big on cheese, right? And my
Okay.
goodness, after 1 year, I was goodness me, cheese was a must for me. I mean, living
Oh, really?
1 day without tasting cheese was, you didn't feel good. You had to take some cheese. Cheese. Wine.
What do you take it
What was
with?
that?
Just cheese by itself?
Yeah, yeah, wine.
Cheese and
Yeah,
wine?
wine. Red wine,
Cheese by
white
itself?
wine, rosé, And the thing is, when you move away from France, right, and then you compare the prices, you're like, oh my goodness, it's crazy. It's
Right.
crazy, right?
And that's that's the next question. So you had a leap from Nigeria to
Mm,
UK, finished
mm,
your studies, worked, and then you leaped into France. But you're
correct.
no longer in France right now. You have now
Correct.
moved to Canada. And you are one of the few people that I know that has done three
Mm,
countries,
mm,
or well, the third country right now. And so, what has I don't know if it's okay to ask what prompted the move, but I'm gonna ask. What
mm,
happened that you made the move. Secondly, um, what have you brought into Canada from your
mm.
experiences from the
Good.
UK and France? Now,
Yeah. So,
yeah,
without going to too much detail,
yeah,
so on the family perspective, I would say all my guys were
okay,
they were fans of North America. They did like France as well. So
right.
I guess when I threw it out, in the family, the vote was unanimous. So
To your
it was
okay,
it was a choice between the UK or North America, right? So everyone was like, "Yeah,
okay,
we want to come over." And so I did my own research, and I was like, "All right, the nuclear sector. Let's
okay,
continue with the nuclear sector." So there was an opportunity, right? There was an opportunity
okay,
to continue in the nuclear sector,
okay,
and also to bring my experience from France and the UK to Canada. So I
right.
guess everything lined up well. So I did my
It was
exactly,
technically
yeah,
like a
yeah.
natural
It was
move. There
natural.
was an opportunity. You didn't up and leave because you wanted
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be
It
in
was.
North
Yeah,
America.
obviously it was.
You did it
There was
because
that beat as well. I mean, it's just like it's just like football, right? You know,
yeah,
you get an opportunity, right? You're playing for one club, and then you want to move to another club, right?
yep,
So you consider so many things, before moving, right? That's kind of how it is. So
right,
you considered
right.
everything, and you want
Your
exactly. So
transfer
you want to
fee.
move, you want to progress, right? You want to step up. Yeah. So that's basically what it was.
Right,
But like I say, there's so many factors, not just the professional, but also family and
family.
So yeah, so it's good, and
Yeah,
it's experience has been good. Obviously, the learning curve is there as well. So even though it's an English, so you've got English and French, but I'm on the English speaking side, right? You still
yeah,
have to learn, you know.
right.
So you learn about quite a number of things, right?
Okay, okay. I have two more questions. Or is it three? What are some of the things you're still looking to accomplish? I mean, you sound like you've hit the top, but you're still curious about so many things technically. So what is that? What are some of those things that you're still eager to accomplish in your career?
Well, I think we never stop learning, right? I think I'm still I'm still scratching the
Yeah.
surface. I think at this stage of my career, what is most important is giving back, right? So when I give back, I think that's the
Okay.
most important thing. So I've been mentoring, right? The professional body I'm with
Yes.
is heavy on mentoring. So I'm a mentor for them. And it's something I do.
Okay.
I would say that as I progress, I'm looking to I'm looking at opportunities where I can give back, where I can mentor people, especially people who want to walk in the
Okay.
path that I've walked before. So that's kind of what I'm looking to do. I'm looking for
Okay.
opportunities where I can act as a sponsor as well. I think that's one area that many people do not pay attention to. So in addition, we know about teaching, right? So if you want to improve, you want someone to
Right.
teach you, you want someone to coach you, you want someone to
Hmm.
mentor you, but not
Yeah.
many people give thought
Right.
to the sponsor. So who is basically someone who would
Okay.
who would basically speak for you when you're not present. So that's basically the area I'm
Okay.
looking at. I'm looking at sponsoring people by helping direct their path. So
Okay.
that's what I'm looking at, and then also working on the networking aspect as well, because obviously when you look back in
Okay.
time, you discover that networks are really important, and I would say where we are is a byproduct of the networks that we have. I mean, whether we accept it or not. And then
Correct.
looking ahead, the passion I have, obviously there's the career aspect, but I guess as time goes on, that mentorship side in me is really strong, right? So just looking for more opportunities to give back. So for me, the pinnacle would be in a
Right. Okay.
position where I can provide that support. So that's what I'm looking for.
Awesome. Okay. So just to add context, when you say sponsorship, you're talking about maybe Society of Engineers, or what kind of bodies are you
Is it
referring to? Just
sponsorship?
just just to be
Okay, yeah. So when I say
yeah. When you mention
sponsorship, I'm talking
sponsorship,
about,
what?
so say you have an engineer who has just completed his or her
Okay.
master's degree, and that same person
Okay.
joins the nuclear sector, right? So the first day at
Okay.
work, that person would be assigned someone to look after the person, right? That's what should happen
Someone.
normally. So if that person wants to learn about a
Right.
concept, let's say commissioning, he or she would get a
Okay.
teacher, someone to teach the person, someone who is more experienced than them, right? And as they proceed, they'll get a coach
Right.
and then a mentor. So the mentor is someone
Okay.
who has, so mostly more, someone who is more experienced, right? But it's, what I find out is that it's kind of
Yeah.
50-50. So if you wanted mentorship, you
Okay.
would go to someone and ask for a specific area where you wanted that support. And then it's all about you to drive it,
Okay.
right? So you have to be specific. What exactly do you want help with? So as you progress within the company,
Right.
right, you get to a stage where you want a new opportunity, you want to change, you want to move countries. That information sometimes
Right.
might be privy to just a sponsor. So a sponsor would be someone who has taken special interest in you. That person is really keen on seeing
Gotcha.
you
Okay.
progress. Okay. So exactly.
And
So if
succeed.
there's a
Okay.
new opportunity in, say, Canada or wherever, that sponsor will be the first person to, give you that information. It's more like a, privileged information, right? So that's why I talk about sponsorship.
Okay.
So that's key, right?
Okay.
It's
Okay.
people
La-
often neglect.
that's key. Yeah. Yeah. So the last question I had was, what advice would you give young engineers who aspire to work in the nuclear power sector, especially in your kind of roles, like commissioning and construction management? What is that? So you have someone that is listening, someone that is about to embark on his master's degree or embark on his undergrad degree, has probably seen people do computer science, civil engineering, but now all of a sudden his interest has been nuclear, and now he has you. What advice would you give them? What classes should they take? What kind of courses should they be looking at? What's that
So
advice
the
you would give?
advice I'll give is, first of all, do not wait. Just make the move immediately. Do not even think twice. So it's the right industry. That's the
Okay.
first thing. And the good thing is, working in the nuclear sector, you don't have to be a nuclear engineer. You can be a project manager, computer scientist, all
Oh,
trades,
okay.
health and safety specialist, chemical engineer, chemist, civil
Okay.
engineer. Everyone is welcome. So the most important thing is for you to
Okay.
work on your skill set, right? Have an open mind, but
Okay.
try to learn, try to be the best you can. So if
Yeah.
you're into project management, for instance, be the best project manager that you can. There's always an opportunity for you in the nuclear sector. So
Okay.
that's the thing. It's
Okay.
not. It's
That's
not.
interesting.
You don't have to have a course in nuclear physics, nuclear engineering. No.
Right. Okay. Okay. Ça, c'est très intéressant.
Avec
Merci
plaisir.
beaucoup. I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can still. Do you still think
Well,
in
I think in
French?
French. I think so. I think when I started, it was it was tough. Um, I think you
Okay.
get to a stage where you're wondering. So as you learn French, your English suffers, right? So there are times when you have to retrace your steps and try
Oh,
and see if you can still string sentences together, right?
well, yeah. I don't think. I don't think.
So it suffers. Yeah,
I
it
don't.
has
I
one
don't.
language has
I
to
don't think
suffer.
your.
I mean, even
I don't
when
think your
I used
English.
to, there are times when where I can speak my my native language. I can speak it obviously, and I can speak one or two other Nigerian languages. You know, I can
Right.
just mix one or two things together. But there are times when
Yeah.
you try to say certain words and French comes out instead. So you're like, oh my goodness, what's happening here? So
No way.
yeah, you get that right. So you have to attune yourself, but then you
Yeah.
get by. So like you can. I still watch material in French, you know, just to make sure the French is okay, right? And
Okay.
you know,
Okay. Well. Thank you for taking out time to talk to me today. We will definitely continue our
sure,
conversation after this recording. But thank you very much for taking out the time, and I hope you've
I
had
did.
fun coming on this. And this is going to help. This is going to help someone. So thank you very much, and
Thanks
it
a lot,
was.
my mentor,
Thank you.
Said.
Thank you.
You are my
You still.
mentor.